welcome to another chat of Chitter Chatter. And today we are going to chit chat with author Vinay Kanchan on his current book. Well, this book is something that I've just read and I've really enjoyed reading. And when you pick up the book, you would know it soon. The name of the book is The Legend of Breakup Bhavani, Part 1. And there's already Part 2, like you can see. Today we're going to chit chat with the author and know a lot more about how this book was conceptualized, a lot more. So let's get started with this chitter chatter.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here this property of yours, Chitter Chatter, because it's very lively, bubbly, effervescent, much like you.
So, thank you for the appreciation before we start. But before we talk about books and writing, all our viewers want to know who is Vinay Kanchan? How would you describe yourself to someone who has never read your work?
So I am somebody who always sees the optimistic side in life. I am somebody who always likes to find the funny in the frustrating. And I believe what you learn with a smile stays with you for the longest while. So, for those who have never read me, I would probably say these three things to introduce myself.
And I would second that since I have read your work and I totally agree with what you've just said. So, do you remember the first story that made you fall in love with storytelling?
Uh, Quite a few of them actually. Uh, so obviously the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, they were narrated to me by my parents, by my grandmother, and I was always fascinated by both these epics. Then I would also say the novels or the books of Enid Blyton to begin with. A lot of comics in the early years, the writings of P.G. Woodhouse, Douglas Adams, all of these have some way played a role in forging me into the kind of person that I am. So I think all of these have had very fond memories in my heart.
If you weren't a writer, what do you think you would be doing today?
If I wasn't a writer, that's a very interesting question. I also train people to think, which I think is one level away from writing in terms of a creative process. It's the step before. And I have always enjoyed opening up minds using stories and humor. So I would probably be very much a trainer and a speaker. Fortunately, I still have legs in those two professions right now. So to that extent, I already have another alternative life, so to speak.
Where did the idea of the legend of Breakup Bhavani come from? Was it the character that was born first, or was it the story?
Again, that's a very interestingly deep question, and this is always the chicken and the egg kind of conundrum, because we always think what comes first. And in this case, I would say it was the character name which came first. This idea came because, for any idea there's a context, and the context with which this began was by accident in many ways, because there was this whole stream of Marvel and DC movies which were coming out and which were doing very well in the market and were blockbusters worldwide. But to me, I thought the interesting thing was to explore superheroes in real life. So I wrote a column at a leading industry platform which said vacancies for superheroes. And in a very playful mood, I started alliterating the names of those superheroes. So I had Traffic Tina, somebody who would get you through traffic jams like the Andheri Sakinaka much faster than you otherwise would. You had Download Dinesh, because this was a time where internet downloads were much slower. You had Excuses Ehsan, a guy who would help you come up with more and more innovative excuses for your Monday morning bunking of work. And in that flow, I wrote Breakup Bhavani. And the moment I wrote it, I wrote a short description which said that a woman who beats up guys who give bad excuses for breaking up with girls. And that really stayed with me because the moment I wrote Breakup Bhavani, those two words leapt out from the screen to me because they showed me there was great potential in this coinage. One, because it was delving into a very irreverent superhero kind of universe, and two, because Bhavani is a very, very powerful name in Indian culture. She was the goddess who inspired Shivaji. So I thought there was a great fusion of superheroes and mythology which could happen here. So that in many ways was the genesis of this idea.
But again, why Bhavani? Because the name itself carries power and mythology. So, what made you choose it in the first place before it even came out of the screen and spoke to you?
So in that alliterative burst, breakup Bhavani came. See, many times in creative thinking, the idea happens before and then we post rationalize it. So breakup Bhavani is just a coinage which came immediately to my mind. But the moment I wrote it down, I saw there was immense merit in the name Bhavani because Bhavani carries such equity, and I wanted this woman to be a powerful character, somebody who had a sort of avenging angel kind of vibe to her, and somebody you would not mess with, an inspiring figure for everybody. So that is why Bhavani. And bringing these two, seemingly disparate words together is always the crux of all creative thinking. So, breakup and Bhavani, it's a nice little fusion there.
Did you always know the story would be in parts or it grew larger in the universe while writing it?
I I thought that there was a lot to say when it came to this idea. But when I began writing the book, I did not know whether it would be a book which would be self contained in one part or whether it would need more. And as I began to write the story and as I began to explore and widen the scope of her influence at one level and also add other interesting characters into the canon at another, I realized that one book would not be enough. I thought this was an opportunity to sort of create a Harry Potter like world for young Indian minds, borrowing from the richness of Indian mythology, but cast in a very today's time and manner and tonality. So when I began, I had no idea whether it would be part one or the end at the end of the book. And as you well know now, that it's opening the door to something larger, hopefully, in the second part as well.
So, how much of Bhavani is imagination and how much of it is drawn from real people?
So again, a good question. Bhavani, a lot of it comes from the mythos of the goddess Durga and the goddess Bhavani, who are in many ways Bhavani is a version of Durga only, where you have this all powerful goddess. Uh, this is an imaginative leap in many ways because I have taken nuances from the superhero universe as well to flesh her out. Because in all superhero mythos, there is the secret alibi which the superhero has, the alter ego. Superman is Clark Kent, and nobody knows people in the book don't know Superman is Clark Kent, but the reader knows that, right? So I took that part of it as well, which is she's a mysterious character. However, I flipped it a little because I decided that it would be even more fun that even if the reader and perhaps the writer himself did not know who Breakup Bhavani really is. So, in many ways, she comes from a little bit of Indian culture, a little bit of tropes like, let's say, Wonder Woman, Mystique in terms of fighting style from the X Men, Captain Marvel to a certain extent, and from the trope of the secret alibi or the alter ego. So those are the things which went around towards constructing this character with a heavy leaning, I think, on the Indianness of it.
One of the striking aspects of your this book is that how the names and the mythology are deeply woven in narrative. So, how did that happen?
So Interestingly, we are living in a time where Indian mythology has made a big comeback in the literary space. I think over the last 10 years, the amount of books on Indian mythology taking varied looks at our epics through different people's perspectives and things like that have really skyrocketed. So I knew that when I was entering a world like this, I needed to have a very distinctive and disruptive take on the same thing. So while I decided to use names which were lent, so to speak, a mythological weight by the sheer fact that they are named after that person, I was very particular about giving them quirky nuances which are entertaining and which will make you smile. Like there is a Professor Agastya, one of the main characters, and as Sage Agastya, we know swallowed the ocean. But here I have not taken that directly. I have given him a relation with water, which he himself perhaps does not know at this time. In one instance, he throws a bottle at somebody and it comes back to him, and he doesn't even realize how it came back to him like a boomerang. Of course, there's Gargi, who is one of the main characters in the book, who was inspired by this ancient Indian scholar, but who was a woman far ahead of her time and is greatly inspirational. But in today's day and time, I gave her a younger role, and she, in many ways, is the the reader, the critical and keen mind and the curious mind of the reader, trying to unravel this whole mystery which is unfolding before her. So there's Ramba, there's Urvashi, and in all their cases, I have given them a modern sheen with leaning a little bit on humor. Uh, there are other people also who have mythological weights to their names, which will get a really long conversation. But I have given them a little quirkiness and a little modernity, just to because this story is set in a college, so I wanted to keep it within that tonality, and so that's why those characters have been constructed in the ways that they have been.
For readers, especially the younger ones who may not consciously notice that these layers put are there through the mythology, the names, be it Gargi, Agastya, and all of them, what do you hope they still feel when they're reading the book?
Yes, that's a pertinent insight, because as a writer, one of your major, let's say, concerns is how much am I taking my readers along with me? How much am I showing them? Are they fully on board? So to me, the first task was writing an entertaining story, right? And having the characters in many ways stand on their own. So these are such characters that even if you don't know the mythological background, you will begin to like them, hopefully, and you will begin to feel their journey. So it does not matter that you might not know the mythological background, but my subtle aim somewhere is also to make people enough intrigued about that name that they will go and research about that person. For instance, in one of the chapters, there is a reference to an ancient scholar from the city of Alexandria, a woman scholar called
Yeah.
Hypatia. And she is a very inspiring character whom many young Indians would not have heard of. But if once you see that little reference to her, you might be inspired. Wow, she was so ahead of her time, right? And you might go up and look up more about her. So likewise, it will happen with the mythological characters as well, and that's in many ways an enhanced pleasure that the reader will have. But his primary or her primary pleasure is in following the story in the form that it unravels. So even if you don't know anything about mythology, I don't think that's a deterrent in any way.
Well, when we talk about Hypatia, I did that after I finished. I didn't do it at that time because I was so much into the story. But last night when I finished reading it, after that I had highlighted that point and I was like, okay, I want to read more about her. So I too did that.
That's nice to hear.
So what I really liked is how the book talks about being a good human, about like life choices and a lot more, but it never preaches at any point. Was this a conscious decision?
Yes, very much. Because, see, I have noticed that any idea exists in a context. So what I noticed is a lot of entertainment these days is largely veering towards darker themes. And sure, there's merit in that, and there's great storytelling and entertainment to be had there. And I'm not knocking that. But in many ways, very few things are about the brighter side of life. In ways in terms of setting good examples and things like that. Right? There are very few influences along those lines. So I wanted every character in this book to be heroic at their own level. So while it's a breakup Bhavani story, in many ways, Gargi and even Ramba are heroic at their own levels. They are traveling their own journeys and they are excelling in whatever it is that they have at hand at that point in time. So it was a very conscious decision to keep the tonality positive, uh, and considering I'm looking at a younger audiences, they don't really react well to being preached to. Nobody does, to be honest. And that's a lesson I think all great religions understand at a very fundamental level, which is why you have stories which are more there in, let's say, pravachan and things like that, because people listen to stories and make their own inferences rather than listening to, let's say, shlokas. Those things come later once you have a more nuanced understanding of the literature, and you begin to evolve as a person. But stories have that beautifully disarming quality of teaching you the right things without ever appearing to teach, right? So that's why this was a conscious fusion of keeping, in many ways, communicating good things, but also doing it in a non-preachy fashion. Hopefully, that's all right. I
So
can
you
hope for.
believe fiction is better teacher than a direct advice?
Absolutely, absolutely. Fiction has that ability, as I said, to get under your radar. Whenever you feel somebody is trying to talk down to you, your hackles get up, right? And your mind closes, and you're not listening to that person, however rationally that person might be making their point. But stories are, let's say, emotional packages. They bypass your rational faculties. They appeal to you at a very different layer and level, and they slip under your radar and begin to influence and persuade and charm you to another point of view. So that's why I believe that that is the way to try and cause change, or influence people's thinking.
And there are many powerful thoughts hidden inside dialogues. Do they come naturally to you or you had to craft them deliberately?
uh I would like to say naturally, for sure. uh, See, most of the time, I have also been a mentor for a long time. I train people, I train young people in the art of thinking. So, a lot of it also comes from the fact that I'm somewhere aware of the dilemmas that they face and the kind of advice that they need. But that's at a subconscious level. What happens is that when you're writing from the perspective of a character, that character's tonality and voice takes over the way in which the dialogue or the thought is narrated, which is why, even though there are certain fountains of wisdom within the Breakup Bhavani universe, each of them communicates these points in a very different manner. For instance, you'll have Appu Swami talk in a very different way from the way, let's say, Bina Biswas or a Professor Agastya talks, or even a Gargi talks. So it depends on the age you are at. And that really governs the words that you use and the concepts and parallel connections that you begin to make, and the way in which you communicate with those around. So I was very conscious of, while giving doses of wisdom, let's put it, for lack of a better word, wisdom, it should be in a way that's enjoyable. For instance, Ramba's poems are a very entertaining way to look at some larger
Yeah.
points, you know so different ways of communicating important points was something I had in mind.
As a writer, how do you balance entertainment with meaning?
I think that is a challenge where, it's a very evolved challenge. And like, for instance, if I were to give you a parallel example from cinema, from Indian cinema, I think Raju Hirani does it well.
True.
Most of Raju Hirani's movies have a higher thought, and yet they are communicated in a lighter manner. And that's what makes them more endearing. Right now, for instance, in Three Idiots, you know that the education system is flawed. It kind of puts the accent more on mugging up and just vomiting on on an exam paper and getting marks, chasing marks. And yet, through the character of Rancho, he's able to show that it's about doing things that you love, which will really take you further. Right? Had he just said that in a bullet point presentation, nobody would have listened to him. Right? But because he makes the character of Rancho so interesting, and he makes that whole universe set in that college so interesting, everybody is looking to listen. So that juggling is a very intricate art, and it's something which everybody tries to do given whatever tools that they have. But for me, at an individual level, my two biggest tools are humor and storytelling. So whatever it is that I try to communicate, even if it's a very somber or solemn point, it will always have shades of those two things when it is on page. So that's the way I look at it.
What kind of reader reaction surprised you the most?
Uh, the the one which really kind of disarmed me was somebody who said that they loved the banter between Gargi and Ramba, and they found it very accurate in terms of the way young women speak with each other. Now, me being a man, I'm not exactly privy to the inner workings of the formidable female mind. So that was really endearing that a woman came and told me that this the chitter chatter, to use your own property, that the chitter chatter between Ramba and Gargi was the thing which they really enjoyed the most in the book. So that stuck with me, because the rest, like people saying that they love the humor, it took them back to college. When can we see a movie or an OTT series? Those you kind of expect when you write. You at some level you know what the influence, what is going to be enjoyed by the audience. This really caught me unawares.
Which is the reader's interpretation in all these years that has made you see your own work differently?
So that happened, when I wrote my very first column in 2003. I was in advertising at that point in time, and I had this idea for a column called Ad Mad World. Over time, that became my first book, The Madness Starts at Nine. When I wrote my very first column, there was a very harsh comment which came in. I thought I had done a good job, but there was a very harsh comment which came in, which said that it's good that you have a steady job because you'll never make it as a writer.
Oh,
And it kind of disturbed me for a while, but then I looked at myself more critically, and I found a lot of flaws in what I had written for my first column. For one, it was too long, and because of that, I was forced to create a character who will sift through all that and deliver very sharp insight and cut down a lot of the written matter. And thus was born a character called Chai La, the mystical Chinese canteen tea boy. Okay. And that character became so popular that this series of writings became a book. So that was one case of feedback being taken to heart and then worked upon. And Chila would not have happened had I not read that comment. And I really tried to better myself from that point. And I think it was a good example of why you should always have some part of yourself open to criticism, because somewhere there might be a truth there.
do you keep readers in mind when you write, or you keep yourself first?
I try to amuse myself to begin with, always. Because I think if you write something which you find amusing, chances are it will transmit across the page to readers. while I come from a marketing background and I know there is something called the consumer, and you have to always be relatable and relevant to the consumer. The moment you start writing for somebody in mind, you lose your authenticity. I think it's very important in writing or any other creative craft to have an authentic side to whatever it is that you're doing. It might not go down well with everybody, but if you deliver true to yourself, you will find that small audience who's really passionate about the way you look at the world. So I essentially write one first for myself. I need to laugh at that line. I don't think about whether people will laugh or not. Right? So if it makes me laugh, it's in the book.
What's your writing process like? A structured one or a creative chaos?
Good question. It's a bit of both. Okay. I see, I'm somebody who also looks at creativity as a very serious subject because my middle two books are about creative thinking, right? This Brika Bhavani is my fourth. Uh, so I well understand that eventually creativity has to have some structure, but in the beginning, you have to have a lot of chaos. You have to be open to random thoughts, random ideas coming together in very unexpected ways. That is the very foundation of creative thinking. When two diverse ideas come together and create something new, that's when you really have create an innovation on your hands. So the more diverse the thinking in the beginning, the better it is, but once you have found a core idea, it is important to incorporate structure. Like there will be a story arc always in a book, right? Or in the case of an ad, there will always be a problem solution kind of setup, but at an initial level, chaos is absolutely welcome.
The book ends at a point where you have been wanting more because, like, I can't give a spoiler, but the way it ends, you're like, oh my god, what next? And so, when you were writing, was this genuinely your end point, or this was written first because you knew at somewhere down the line that, okay, this is going to be in parts and it's going to grow bigger?
So, thank you so much for that comment. It really makes a writer feel better whenever he hears that or she hears that. Um, as I began writing, I knew this would not be one book, but I wanted to leave it at an intriguing moment. In many ways, maybe perhaps one of my inspirations was Bahubali ko Katappa ne kyun mara, right? Because it's a very intriguing way to set up part two uh, for in that Bahubali canon. So for me, it was very important to keep the first book self-contained in many ways, and yet throw enough which makes you interested in reading another one along these lines and wanting to know how does this further go ahead or resolve, or who what is the big thing which is being hatched in the background. All those things I kind of seeded in this book, but by itself, as a standalone as well, it works. So I think, even when you look at many of these OTT series, when they leave a season and go to season two, there is an interesting transition point which closes the loop on all conversations started in the first part and yet leaves some open for the season two to start from.
So, without spoilers, can we give our viewers a little about season two?
No, so what I would say is that the story will increase in scope. Um there will be a couple of new, more interesting characters coming in as well. You will see further developments in the core characters arcs. Uh, Maybe there is some romance on the cards. Uh, and there might be a sort of larger threatening event which will begin to take root in part two. So that's what I can say at this point in time. I hope
Okay,
that
and
intrigues you.
it is already the chapter itself has intrigued me, and I'm waiting for part two. And I'm sure that's going to happen with all the readers who pick up the book, and they are going to be like, "Okay, come on, give us the chapter, the book two soon, because we want to know what happened after that."
Yeah.
So, last segment of our chitter chatter, a rapid fire round. Are you ready?
Yes,
Okay. So, you as a writer, a morning time or the late night time?
both. I write at both times. I write at all times of the day. But if you put a gun to my head and say, what time do I prefer writing the most? Just after waking up after a nice nap, which could be either in the morning, it could be late evening as well.
Mythology or modern fiction?
Again, because my book is taps into both worlds, I like both, but I might have a leaning towards mythology.
One book that changed your life.
I would say two, and I would say The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams and Catch 22 by Joseph Heller, because they showed me the possibilities of the written word in terms of generating humor.
One character you wish you had written.
Batman.
Tea or coffee?
Tea. Unabashedly. I'm a
Plo-
teetotaler.
I know that, but I just wanted my viewers to know it. Plotter or panster?
Proto or
Plotter or
huh,
planster?
plotter.
If Bhavani could give one line of advice to readers, what would it be?
Pick up part two.
And finally, I would like to ask you, what would you like to say to aspiring writers who are still waiting to write there but do not have the courage?
uh, that's a very responsible question you have asked me. So I will give you a responsible answer. The first thing I would say to all budding writers out there is, if you believe you are a writer, put words down on paper. Words in your mind and stories in your mind do not count. It's only when you begin committing yourself to paper, and I use those words advisedly, committing yourself to paper. It's an act of courage to actually write something down, right? That's when you begin to make the first step towards becoming a writer. A writer is faced with a lot of moments of self doubt, because a blank page staring back at you is a very disconcerting feeling. Get used to it. Everybody goes through that. Even the best writers have had periods where they have simply not been able to write. So just, there is no alternative to just sitting in front of the computer or your pad, depends on the way you write, and simply blocking off time to write. You might not write anything in that period, but that time is well worth investing in, because that's what makes you a better writer. Even if you write one line at the end of 3 hours, you're a little better for that whole thing. And the third thing is, be a writer only if you enjoy it. Don't be a writer because you're seeing a lot of other people write books and you feel, why can't I? Sure, you can. But be a writer because you enjoy the written word. You love the symmetry of lines on a page. You like the way certain words sit at certain places in sentences. And when you flip that around and put them in another place in the same sentence, they acquire a whole different meaning in life. Enjoy the craft. If you like that, you will really be on your way to be a great writer. Lastly, write for yourself. Don't bother about the audience. If you like what you write, chances are others will.
Thank you so much, Vinay, for this advice and for the entire chitter chat. It was great having you on the show.
Same here. Thank you so much. Thank you for your kind words. And I hope whatever we have discussed here is of some use to some people listening to this out there. It'll be really nice to hear from them as well.
I'm sure they will. They'll enjoy the chitter chatter and they will enjoy all your books, including the current book. So, all the best for the book and for the part two, too.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shweta.